Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. We believe that the relationship between a dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Let's get to it. Let's tune in. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and we believe that everyone, I'm going to say the intro to my other podcast, we believe that the relationship between a dad and his daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. And therefore, we're on a mission to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share. Follow us on all of our social media platforms at the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Also, make sure you guys are checking us out on our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube. That's the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network, where not only will you find the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, but you'll also find our partner podcast, which is the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, which at this time we're coming up on 200 episodes of that podcast. So make sure that you guys, again, go to the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube in order to check out our website. Check out our podcast, video podcast on YouTube. Also, as you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase. This week, our product of the week is our purpose journals, as well as our purpose planners. You can see mine over here on the shelf. But I believe that we should journal in order to keep track of where we've been and where we are, while at the same time planning for our purpose. So you can get your purpose journal and purpose planner on Amazon. The links are in the description. Make sure you go check out the descriptions under the podcast anyway, because we have amazing information there. So make sure you guys go and check that out. Again, that is our product of the week, which is our purpose journal and our purpose planner. Now, today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Miss Lauren Burns. How are you doing?
I am great. Thanks for having me on. And that purpose journal is important because, man, if I didn't have my journal writing everything down, I wouldn't be able to look back and see all the healing that has happened.
Yes, love it. So first of all, let me say thank you, Lauren, for being on, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you are here with me today and our listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So we're going to start this thing right off. Lauren, do me a favor, introduce yourself to my audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and some of the things that you do.
Well, thank you. Yes, I am the host of the Redeemed podcast. I am a mom and a wife, and I'm a full-time physical therapist. And the reason I started the Redeemed podcast is to share my own story of my healing journey from my father wounds that we'll get into today.
I love it. Yes, we will get into it. So why not get into it right now, right?
Sure.
So generally, when I have my dads on, I start off by asking them two questions. What does it mean to be a girl dad? And what was something that your daughters have taught you? That's generally how I started. But since we don't, you're not a girl dad, and this would be a little different, I guess, part of your answer, because on the flip side of what I start to ask the daughters is what would it mean for you to be a daddy's girl? But that kind of would probably be different in your story, or let me just ask, would you consider yourself a daddy's girl now, or at some point in your life that, maybe you wouldn't consider yourself to be a daddy's girl?
I longed to be a daddy's girl. A big part of my story is those years of longing to know my father, to have that relationship, and the huge void that I had, and how I had to learn the love of my heavenly father. That word father hurt for a long time. And God had to show me I'm nothing like your earthly father. My dad made some big mistakes, and we'll talk about some of those things. But really, I hope your audience hears as I share my story that doesn't matter your childhood wounds and your past. God can redeem and heal any wound, any story. And now I'm a mom, and I have a husband, and I have children, and they have the same parents, and we've lived in the same house. So my redemption story, really, I've seen as an adult. I didn't see it in high school. I didn't see it in middle school, but I'm seeing it now. And so if you're in the middle of some hard things, hold on tight because your story's not over.
I love it. I love it. So let's get into it because generally, again, going back to the fact that I usually have dads on,
Sure.
I will ask like, what are the earliest memories, of being a father and coming home for the first time with this new girl, baby girl, and realizing that you're responsible for that for her. But in your story, of course, it's a little different. So let's just jump right in and I'll just let you kind of go, to start to tell the story and chime in as we go along. But you
Sure.
know, yeah, just kind of tell us your story from your viewpoint.
Well, and so I can sort of speak to my father a little bit. My childhood was such a hot mess. I always say that I actually have a movie made about my life because of the crazy things that happened. NBC made a movie called Desperate Rescue, the Kathy Mahone story. You can still find it on YouTube. I think it still plays on Lifetime. Lifetime plays all those old movies. Um, but my parents got divorced by the time I was 6 weeks old because of their religious differences, because of their beliefs. My father's from Jordan and he's Muslim, and my mom, they met in Dallas, Texas, and my mom was from Florida. And so at the ages, when my mom was pregnant with me, my father went to Jordan without my mom knowing. He just said he was going on a trip. He was gone for 3 months, and she was left by herself for the first time as a new mama. And when he came back, he told my mom he went to Jordan to make a home for us. He had found a job, a place to live, and he wanted to raise me in his tradition and his custom. He had this responsibility of this first time dad. And so the reason my father kidnapped me when I was 7 years old, and I believe he took me not to hurt me. I really believe he took me because he wanted me to be raised in his beliefs and his culture with his family. And he had this responsibility as a father. Now, did he do the wrong thing? Absolutely, because it was devastating and it changed our life forever. But it wasn't out of a place of wanting to hurt me.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because I wanted to kind of chime in on that because you started by saying he had this responsibility and he obviously was taking the responsibility seriously to go back to a whole other country and to build this life or build this place for his family, and so knowing that just in the space that we are in, a lot of times it's kind of the opposite. There are dads that for whatever reason may have not been in their children's life, or some may have chosen not to be, and some maybe was forced not to be. And so again, in your dad's eyes, he was doing the right thing. Like, no, I'm going to prepare this place for my family, and I want them to be raised in my traditions and how I believe, which every dad does. And so I'm really happy that you preface that because it wasn't like he was doing it out of malice. Did he go about it the right way? Yeah, maybe not. But his intentions were good. And so I'm glad that you pointed that out. Um, that you don't believe that in his intent was to harm you. It was just he wanted his family to be, raised in his ideals. And so I'm glad that you pointed that out. But I'll let you continue.
Yes, he made a lot of bad decisions. And in the core four in your book that you have, one of the big things that highlight to me was protection. He didn't abandon me. He did not protect me. So he had remarried and he had other children. So I had little siblings and I had an amazing stepmother, and she was pregnant with their third child when this was going on. And so he had planned this all along. The laws in Jordan is when a child turns 7, all rights go to the father. Well, my birthday's in September. He kidnapped me in October, Halloween weekend. And before doing this, he sent my stepmother and the children away outside of Texas on a vacation. So that way they didn't even know what was going on. So the weekend he asked if he could take me trick-or-treating. He comes and he picks me up and I'm all dressed up in my little costume to go trick-or-treating. I get in the car and he says, I have a big surprise for you. We're going to the airport. I'm taking you to Jordan so you can meet your family that you've never met. And I begin asking, does my mom know about this? My mom never told me I was going, anywhere. Where's my siblings? Where's my stepmom? And the more questions I asked as he was driving to the airport, the more frustrated he became. And I just knew I needed to stop asking the questions. Mm-hmm. That Monday, my mom went to go surprise me. And to me, it's already God showing up, because my mom was a single mom. She didn't have time to go have lunch with me in the middle of a school day. She's working her booty off, right? But that Monday, she went to the school to go have lunch with me. When she got there, I was nowhere to be found. And the teacher told her, your ex-husband never brought your daughter to school. And this is in the 80s. 1987, and there's no cell phone. So my mom went to the payphone. She called his house. No one answered. She called the restaurant that he worked at, and they told her, Ali never came to work today. Well, that is when it's almost like God was talking to her right then. Something is wrong. My mom, standing at that payphone, she dialed the Alia Airlines is the back then it was the Royal Jordanian Airlines now. The main airlines that goes into Jordan. She dialed the headquarters. And when the woman answered, she said, do you have a Lauren and a Ali on your flight reservation? And the lady said, ma'am, I can't give out that kind of information. Well, then her voice changed. And she said, I think my ex-husband's taken my daughter. Please, will you help me? And the woman came back up on the phone and said, yes, ma'am. I have a Lauren and a Ali landing in Amman, Jordan this evening. And that was the moment my mom knew that my dad had taken me. And then her next phone call, if you like country music, you'll know Miranda Lambert, that name, country singer-songwriter. Her parents are Beverly and Rick. Well, Bev and Rick were my mom's closest friends, and they were private investigators in Dallas at the time. And so the next phone call my mom made was to Beverly and Rick Lambert. And my mom told them what happened, and they dropped everything, and they went to my mom's townhouse. They moved in with her, with Miranda, stayed with her day and night, trying to figure out a way to get me back.
Wow. And that's so from, man, I don't even know where to go with that, right? So I think about, just as a dad myself, right? And I think it, for every parent, that is like one of the biggest things, outside of, your child being hurt, is your child being taken. You know what I mean? Because I think in a sense that's even worse, because it's the not knowing. Is my child being hurt away from me? Is my child safe? Is my child even alive? When you think about those questions, when we talk about children being taken away from you or kidnapped and that nature. So I could just kind of understand the frustration, or the, like, oh my God, what is going on? From your mom's standpoint, it's like, what do you mean she's not here? You know what I'm saying? And then he's not there either. And I'm grateful that she even had the mindset to automatically think, okay, maybe this is. I mean, I'm sure they probably had the conversation before, that he wanted to move to Jordan, but even to have that thought process, like this might be what's happening, that your mom had to call the airline, and because I think that with some families whose children become missing, and you don't even know what the first step to do. You just kind of like I just stuck, and so
Mhm.
for your mom to even have the wherewithal to be like, you know what, let me start
Didn't
rolling.
even leave the school building. She was on the payphone already figuring it out. I mean, it was just, and to me, that was just God's provision. I mean, just so fast, so fast. And my mom had full custody of me, and so, but she never wanted to keep me from my dad. They had a great relationship.
Mhm.
Anytime my mom needed help, she's a single mom, my dad would step in. They flip-flopped all the time. I'd go back and forth. I called him the Disney dad. He would take me to all the fun places. We had I remember an amazing relationship. I remember going to his restaurant and watching him cook and me acting like a waitress and serving people at the restaurant. It hurts. It hurts to talk about because I loved my father. But when he did what he did, he took me from my country. He took me from my language. He took me from my friends and my family. He took me from everything I ever knew. When we were in Jordan, I didn't know anyone. I didn't know how to speak Arabic. The bathrooms, even, it was a hole in the ground. It wasn't a regular toilet that you sit on. For a 7-year-old little girl to have to go to the bathroom squatting over a hole was really traumatic. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was very traumatic. And my father, because the custom, his beliefs was very conservative. The men weren't supposed to take care of the kids. It was the women's job. And so my father wouldn't, all of a sudden, he wouldn't tuck me in at night. He wouldn't brush my hair. He wouldn't do the normal things he would always do. And so I didn't even really know who he was when we were in Jordan. And it was my aunt and my grandmothers that I just met. It was their job to take care of me. So it was culture shock and not having my mom, not being allowed to talk to my mom, all of this at the same time. And so there's a lot going on with me. And then my mom's story of trying to fight to get me back. It was quite the journey, but God can heal and restore and redeem every bit of it.
yeah, yeah. And I definitely want to get to that part of the story, and even where you guys are now. But I want to go back a little bit because
Sure.
just thinking about that, as a 7-year old, definitely culture shock, and then I know you mentioned that you had a great stepmom, and that so even those relationships, I guess, maybe helped a little bit. But I don't know, did they speak English?
They weren't there. And so a big part, I'm writing a book because the movie is great, but the movie does not tell you the whole story. And when
Mhm.
I started writing this book, I really felt passionately that God was calling me to write the story. It's not like I had all this free time. Let me go do a podcast. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I have the cassette tapes. When Rick Lambert came to the townhouse, he told my mom, go to Radio Shack and get a recording device and put it on the phone. So every time you try to call Jordan, talk to any of the family members, when you call the police or the FBI or the State Department, we need to record these conversations so you can remember what they're saying, because you can imagine her mind was
Right.
all over the
Yeah.
place. She's not eating, she's not sleeping, she was a hot mess. So I spent the last year listening to these cassette tape recordings, talk about emotions. I've listened to my father talk to my mom. I've listened to my mom beg and begging to talk to me. And everyone was saying, all I speak is Arabic, Arabic, Arabic. And my mom's like, please, does anyone speak English? I just want my baby back. I won't prosecute Ollie. Just bring her home. She's just desperate. Um, so I was able to listen to the cassette tapes of my dad saying, well, eventually you'll be able to come visit her, not right now. Let her get settled. She's happy. Don't worry. But you can't talk to her right now. You can't see her right now. And my stepmother and my siblings never came to Jordan. My
Mm.
stepmother refused. She kept telling my dad, this is not right what you've done. I am not Lauren's mother. You have to bring her home. I'm not going to come to Jordan and be her mom. She has a mom. You have to bring her home. So she was trying, and she was pregnant with her third child. So she was trying to keep that as leverage. And she was in her young 20s. I'm 44 now and have 2 kids. So as I'm listening to these cassette tapes, I'm like blown away by what these women went through. And they're fighting, and she's fighting too. Bring her home. And so that was hard because I didn't even have her with me or my little siblings with me.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Wow. Because I was thinking that she was with you guys, and
No.
you guys had a whole little new family, should I say? But you're saying that they weren't even there. So it's like you go to this new country around new people, so everything is new. You know
Right.
what I mean? So wow, that's definitely a understandable culture shock, life shock.
Mhm. Mhm.
At any age, I think that would have been hard. And so let's go a little further into
Sure.
the story. How long did that last? As far as you being with your dad before you were rescued, and we definitely want to get into the rescue part of the story. But how long did it last? And were there any um, good memories, should I say, of that experience? Like, did it get to a point where you did kind of, you know, get a little bit more comfortable with, what was going on? Not saying that you were,
Sure.
comfortable with not being away from home, but just being
Right.
comfortable my understanding, your dad still was your dad, and I guess even that was different because, like you said, the roles changed a little bit. So he probably wasn't as affectionate as he was in the States because now he's in a different situation. So tell us a little bit about that. How did you adjust, during that time period, and was there a moment of comfortability a little bit at some point?
So I was there for 3 months, which is not a long time, but it's also a very long time, if that
Yes,
makes any sense.
yes,
Um, and I knew my dad kept telling me that we were on a vacation, and I was just getting to, meet my family and a new experience. And when I started going to school, I knew it was not a vacation,
yes.
right? Like every kid knows school vacation does not
Yeah,
equal.
right.
Um, and I was, wearing the uniform and covering my hair and learning the customs. And I had to go back to like preschool because I couldn't speak the language. So
Mm,
I'm the oldest kid in the class, and I stick out like a sore thumb, and I'm trying to learn how to speak Arabic and write Arabic. And I refused to use the restroom. And so they would take me to a different building where there was actual toilet.
mm,
Those are the things I remember, but there were good moments. They had a big family, and I loved being around all of the family, big birthday parties and celebrations. Every night, people, the way I describe it, it's like one little apartment building on top of the other, on top of the other. So the whole family lived in one big building with little apartments. And at
mhm.
the top, the roof was flat and open. So everyone would go up to the top of the roof every night. The men would go over and have like a smoke their peace pipe. I think it's called a hookah, if I'm saying it
Yeah,
correctly.
yeah.
And then the women would be over together and drinking their hot tea, and they'd have their prayer beads. So I remember how much community there was and family. There was not a lot of crime, so we could go out even at 7 years old and play in the streets with my cousins. So those were the good memories. But there was just, I missed my mom, and I was not allowed to talk to her. And so there was good memories mixed with confusion, mixed with fear, all of that going on. And uh, I was able to talk to my mom once or twice, and my dad would just sort of coach me. Don't tell mom where you are. Don't say anything bad about me or the family. Let her know you're happy and you're okay. And he did the same thing with her. And he would stand there and listen as we were talking. So I knew I had to just, say the right thing and be careful, or I would maybe not be able to talk to my mom again.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's go a little further in the story. So it does
Sure.
get to the part where you know you are rescued. So how was that, and how did that play out?
there's a lot of details. I mean, it was a 2-hour movie, and the book, I mean, it's amazing because in me doing the podcast, I actually interview all of the men that rescued me.
Hmm.
I have not talked to these men since my rescue, and people will say, well, what do you mean? And if someone's listening and they've gone through something really traumatic, you know what it's like. You don't go back and visit the trauma.
Yeah.
You
Right.
just keep pushing forward. But writing my story, I started trying to find these men, and now I've actually seen them in person. We flew to North Carolina back last September, and I got to tell them thank you for risking their lives to save mine. They were ex-military, Green Beret, Delta Force, Army Rangers. These men were veterans, and they wanted to continue to work. And so they came up with a company called CTU in North Carolina. And their mission was to go into the Middle East to rescue hostages, not children, but adults. It's amazing how my mom found these men. That's a whole God story of lots of prayers. She fasted for 3 days. And after fasting for 3 days in a little motel room in Fort Worth, God gave her a scripture verse in Daniel 10:12, because you've humbled yourself before me, your words were heard. And she came out of that motel room and everything started falling into place. She was connected with these men, and she flew the guys to Dallas, and they told her, Kathy, we've never rescued a child. If we are captured, the United States will not help us because we do not work for the military, and they cannot get involved because there's no treaty between the United States and Jordan.
Mhm.
And they said, we can't guarantee your safety or your daughter's safety. And my mom said, I don't care, whatever it takes. Please help me. And they said, it's going to cost a lot of money to pull this off. My mom was able to pull together $80,000 in the 1980s as a single mom. And they went over to Jordan, and the first thing, they had to find me. So they had to find me. They had to try to track down my father's home. They were there for 3 weeks trying to find me in this town and could not find me. And so then they brought my mom in, and they had her under disguise. And that's an amazing story of how they found me, how they found my father's home. And it was JD, Dawn, and Dave. And these men are amazing. And what they did is after they found my father's house, they decided the best way to get me out was to hijack the school bus that I was on, because the house was in the busy city right next to a police station. They're like, that's too high risk.
Yeah.
But following that school bus, there was one little stop on the outskirts of town, a little farmhouse, and they thought that's the perfect place to try to capture, to get Lauren. So that's what they did. They hijacked a school bus, and we escaped over the Jordanian River between Jordan and Israel. It's called the King Hussein Bridge. We escaped over that bridge into Israel. And once we were able to get into Israel, and I'm skipping lots of details,
Right. Right.
we were home safe. They shut down the whole airport looking for me because we had fake reservations at the airport. Thank God, because that was a good decoy. One of the men almost got captured. He was pulled over, surrounded by Jordanian police, but because that airport was shut down, they all left him on the side of the road, and they went to the airport looking for us, and he was able to escape. That is a God story.
Yes, yes. That wow, that is amazing. That is amazing. I know we don't have time to go into everything, but because this
You got the highlights.
right, right, right. So let's fast forward a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you're rescued, you guys are safe, you're back home, and now we're going through, of course, up into who you are now and the work
Yes.
that you do. There was a process of redemption. There was a
Yes.
process of forgiving, and so let's talk about that a little bit. At what point did you begin your journey of being able to look at everything that you have been through, from a daughter's eye, viewpoint, and from, kind of like you started even being able to uh, resonate with how your dad
Sure.
was thinking at that time, to being able to put those pieces together to now be like, it was unfortunate, but this is where I am now. So let's get into your journey a little bit, even,
Absolutely.
again, reflection on everything that you've been through to get to your redemption story now.
So it is beauty from ashes, and that it can only be because of my faith. I've known God for a long time, and I've also been very mad at God, if I'm being honest.
Mhm.
That word father, and when you talk about God in the Bible, you're a good, good father. I didn't like that word. And so for the person listening that maybe has had those feelings, God had to walk me through forgiveness. And my mom started the process. She showed me what it looks like to forgive. We had to change my last name. We lived in hiding for many years. But when I really wanted to know who my dad was, I'm like, I want to know who he is. Why did he take me? Why did he do this? When he took me, it took that relationship. And so my mom allowed me to see him. We were writing letters back and forth. We had to do it in a safe way so he didn't know where we lived. So we would write it to a post office. It was this whole thing. Then we began to talk on the phone, which was so hard. I had to face my fear. When I heard his voice on the phone, my heart would race and the emotions would come and I would get angry and all the things. And then I wanted to see him in person. Like, what does he look like? Do we look like each other? Just all the questions. And so I saw him, I got to see my siblings, I got to see my stepmother. I visited him throughout my childhood when it was safe. My mom allowed that. My graduation from Lindale High School in East Texas, my father came to my graduation because I wanted him there. My mom allowed him to come into our home and cooked a meal for him after all that we had gone through. That's what forgiveness looks like. So she showed me, she was my example. She didn't badmouth my dad even after everything we went through and all the money she spent and changing our life over and over. But I had to wrestle with God. I was angry. I was like, you say you're a good father, but I don't know what a good father looks like. And it's like God was saying, Lauren, let me show you. But I had to forgive over and over. 70 times 7 is what the Bible says. Forgiveness does not mean that what my dad did was okay, because I believe that false lie.
Yeah.
Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to forget, or I wouldn't be here sharing my story. Forgiveness really is, God, he's yours. I'm laying him at your feet. I'm letting this anger and this resentment, this control, I'm letting it go over and over again. And as I began to walk through that journey of forgiving, I could see my dad the way I explained to him earlier, without anger. I could see his intent was not to harm me, but he thought in his mind he was doing the right thing. And then when you get into identity, like Psalm 68:5, a father to the fatherless, that's who God is. But saying that to that 14-year-old girl that was desperate for a father to wrap his arms around me, those words sound nice in Psalms, but I wanted those arms around me. And so I struggled with that loss.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's just amazing. So now, as an adult, how's your relationship with your dad now? Or do you have a relationship? Are you in communication?
That's a great question. Again, I think it goes back to, Ernest, it's you are in control of your beliefs and your actions and your heart, but you can't control that other person. So that's that letting go. I was able I think I was probably 19. My father showed up at my house. He wasn't invited. It was Halloween weekend. Ooh,
Well, I would say trauma. Was a trigger
yeah,
warning right
yeah.
there. Like, whoa.
I was going to say, I might get emotional sharing this. My dad kept calling, asking if he could come see me. And I kept telling him no, but I did not want to tell him why. I just said, no, I'm too busy. I can't see you. He drove all the way from Dallas 2 hours to Lindale, which is a small little town. We lived in the middle of nowhere. He drove a long way, showed up at our house, knocked on the door, and the fear fell over me when I walked to that door and I saw him. And I'll remember it like it was yesterday. I went back to my parents. My mom had remarried, and I went back to my parents' room and I said, he's here. And my mom saw the fear all over me and said, who? I said, he. I couldn't even say the word dad. Ollie is here. because that word dad hurts.
Mhm.
And my mom looked at me, and I know this was God. And she said, Lauren, I have seen you cry. I have seen your tears. I have seen you hurt for too long. It's his turn. And for me personally, I'm a people pleaser. Sometimes I have to get mad enough or emotional enough to be that real and honest. And I said, you're right. And I turned around, 19 years old, went to the door and said, come on in, we need to talk. And we sat in my living room. And for the first time, I let it all out. I said, do you know why I said no for you to come? And he just looked at me. He had no clue. And that hurt. And I said, for year after year, I hated Halloween because this is the anniversary of you taking me. This is the anniversary of you changing my life forever. And this is why we don't have a relationship, because this is when you took me. And he was clueless. And so that hurt. But it allowed me to get it all off my chest. And it was that beginning. You've got to face it. I had to face my fear. And then you asked me, have I been able to have a relationship? I was able, in 2018, my stepfather passed away, and my dad reconnected with me totally out of the blue. I hadn't heard from him in 5 years. He reconnected with me, and I was able to tell him, I forgive you. Because I believe in Jesus, because Jesus has forgiven me of my sins, I can forgive you for what you did. I am no longer angry. And guys, that is freedom. Those chains fell off of me. But I said, but I don't necessarily want a relationship, because he could never really own what he did. He just wanted to gloss over things. He never really wanted to understand. He just wanted to pick up where we left off and say, hey, I love you. You're my baby. And it's like a stranger calling you baby.
Yeah.
He wanted to know who my kids were. He wanted to know my husband. He wanted to jump into my life. But there's a lot of steps that have to happen before you can just do that. And so am I angry with him anymore? No, not at all. If he picked up the phone today and was like, Lauren, I'm so sorry. Could we pick up and heal and have a relationship? Probably. But I don't know the end of that story yet.
Yeah, yeah. And I like that you said that, because again, for those who know my backstory of coming into the whole podcast world, of kind of coming into it, dealing with, or coming to the realization of my relationship with fatherless daughters. I started doing work with fathers who are coming back into the lives of their daughters for some time, and that is one of the things that I talk about with the dads. Like, you can't pick up, you can't come. You have to pick up where they are now. You can't try
Yeah,
to
I'm not
pick up
7
where
years
you.
old.
Yes, and that's the whole thing. Like, they were 7 when you left, and now she's 17. You know what I mean, or 27, and now you're coming and trying to
40.
trying to come back in like she was still 7. You know what I mean, and like everything is fine. Like, no, you can't do that. Like, you got to come in where you are, where they are now, and you got to come in where they allow you to. You can't force your way in. You can't. You got to earn that space. When your daughter was born, you were giving that opportunity, but you gave it away or lost it, however
Yes.
it came to that point. Well, now you have to earn that back. You know what I mean? You have to earn that through love and respect and responsibility and relationship. You have to earn that back. So to all the dads that are coming back into your kid's life, your daughter's life, or even your son's, but your kids in general, like, there's a process that you have to go through. Just because you see it as, oh, that's my baby, your baby might not be a baby anymore. And so you
Right.
have to take in consideration their thoughts, their feelings, their reality, and again, earn that space to be considered a dad or a father, have it, whichever word you want to say it. But you have to earn that space. So I'm
Mhm.
I'm glad that you guys at least have come to that reconciliation of to being able to forgive. And those who know me know forgiveness is a big part of me. So now you're at this point. Now you got a podcast. Try to tell your story. So let's talk a little bit about the podcast and some of the things that you have coming up now that you're involved with.
Sure. Thank you. So the Redeem podcast is on all the places that you can listen, even YouTube. I never thought I would do this. I really felt God calling me to write my story. It was almost like, how dare you keep all of this in a box, literal box, by the way, in my hot Texas garage with a label Jordan on it. I showed you earlier, but I have tons of newspaper magazines and all the things, like, because it hit national news and we were in all the magazines, and so I had all of this in a box. My mom's journals, like you were showing your journal on Amazon, guys, she wrote every single day I was gone, details of even what she ate for breakfast and how she was feeling, and to sit and read what my mom was going through. It's like God gave me every detail to write a book. But then someone said, Lauren, you have to have a platform. I'm like, I don't know what that means. And so I started the podcast, and I've got 67 episodes. I know you can agree with this. Never realized the doors it would open, the people I have met. It's a lot of work, guys, just so you know. And we're working full time, and this is like a side hustle. But the people, the stories, the Redeem podcast, I interview people with amazing testimonies. I interview Bev and Rick Lambert, and they share the details of what they went through when I was gone. My mom and I do interviews together, and that's emotional. You're going to hear both of us crying. And I share some of the cassette tapes on those episodes. And then I'm writing a book. The manuscript is done. We go to publishers this fall to hopefully that a publisher would pick up the book. And so if you want to help support, you can go to Lauren Burns, LaurenBurns.net to subscribe to the Redeem newsletter, because that will connect you with the book.
I love it. I love it. Lauren, you have an amazing story. Um, Yeah, you have an amazing story, and I definitely will be checking out the podcast, and definitely when the book comes out and everything, make sure you let us know. We
Okay.
definitely put all that information in the description
Thank
of the
you.
podcast so that the listeners have the opportunity to support you. I think your story is amazing. We're going to switch it up just a little bit. Um, and go into the next segment of the podcast, which I call the Getting to the Core segment. And so the Getting to the Core segment is built off of the ebook, The Core Four
Yes.
ebook, which I wrote, which kind of talks about the four core values that I believe that every daughter should get from her father, right? And so when we talk about the core four, those four core values are guidance, affirmation, love and affection, and protection, right? Those are the four core values that I believe that every daughter should get from her father. And I know you talked a little bit about it earlier
Mhm.
as you read it. So I would definitely like to get your viewpoint on the book as overall. But then, you mentioned about the protection part of it and how that resonated with you. So let's talk about that a little bit. So first of all, your opinion of the book as a overall, and then your experience with the protection part of it.
So you are correct. And if you think about your core values, if you go to biblical as well, it's all there, right? We have to have that love, that affirmation, and that protection. And so when one of those things is missing, and I felt like I had the love part, I never felt unloved from my father. Yes, when we were in Jordan, there was a big separation, cultural difference. There was a wall there, but he had already established 7 years with me of that love. So I never felt like he didn't love me. And
Mhm.
even after I came home, I knew he wanted a relationship with me. But that protection piece, with your father is supposed to be the one that protects you, like would do anything to protect you. And he didn't do that. He threw me in harm's way. And so that was a huge separation of trust. I no longer trust you because you took me from everything. You lied to me. And so that is a break of protection. And so that's why I latched onto that core four. I'm like circling, yes, that was a missing piece in my story.
Yes, yes, I love it. I love it. So, before we get out of here, Lauren, I definitely appreciate your story. I appreciate you being on. We're definitely going to uh, celebrate you and support you with your podcast, and hopefully one day I'll be able to share my story on your podcast.
Yes,
I would love that.
absolutely.
Um, yes, and also I'll put it out here now. Definitely would love to have you on the Deal to Heal with E James podcast, and we could definitely get into the healing part of it and the
Yes.
forgiveness. Really dive deeper into the story. I would love to do that. So I when we're on this podcast, I started this podcast to be a bridge between uh, daughters and fathers, of fathers and daughters, right? Of even of those, fatherless daughters who may not have had the experience of having their dads in their lives, or a positive experience of having their dads in their lives. And, just to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter, and all the complexities of how that looks, right? Because
Right.
even in your story, it wasn't the absent father, you know what I mean? It was a very active father, and kind of the other side of it, the way that we look at it. But I like to leave our audience with something that they can take away. So I want you to leave us with a word of advice. I don't know, however you want to leave, just something that, our
Sure.
daughters or our fathers can take away, from your story, and then leave us again with your social media handles and things of that nature where we can find you and support you. So I'll give you a couple seconds to think about that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure that you guys are checking us out on our website, thedealhealfulfill.org, because my mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. You guys can go to dealhealfulfill.org, and also check out my new website, which is my speaker's website, which is Ernest James Speaks Life.com, in order to have me come out to be a speaker at your school or organization, or to facilitate a workshop, because that is what I do. So make sure you guys go there, ErnestJamesSpeaksLife.com, and check that out. Also go to ebooks by ejames.com, with some go over to purchase some of the ebooks that I have available, including the core four, which we talked about today. But I also have a ebook called From Males to Men, which is a male mentoring ebook for young boys. And one of my favorites, Forgiving Me, the 4-Step Guide to Self Forgiveness, is also available. Again, that's at ebooks by ejames.com. So make sure you guys go and check that out. And we have our podcast merch, right? We have our inspirational t-shirt line, which is deal2healtees.com. That's deal, the number two, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. So again, go to deal, the number two, healtees.com, in order to get your inspirational t-shirt, or even our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. There's one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, as well as one for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have bi-monthly, we have free virtual workshops talking about everything surrounding forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world, just everything around forgiveness. The workshops are absolutely free, but the information is priceless. Again, it's bi-monthly. So whenever you're listening to this podcast, either one just ended or there's one coming up. So make sure you guys go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for our next forgiveness workshop, which is absolutely free. Again, but the information is priceless. Or you can go to Eventbrite and look up forgiveness workshop sponsored by the Forgiveness mission. Make sure you guys go there and check us out. Once again, Lauren, I want to say thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I think it's really speaking to the audience that has grown up without a father. I want you to know two things. One, 1 John 3:1, see what incredible love the Father has shown us, that he would name us and want us. You have a heavenly Father that wants you, and he chases after you. And again, when I was in high school, middle school, people could tell me that all day. And I'm like, whatever, I want a real dad hugging on me. But if you will just speak those words, God will show you that love. And then Joel 2:25, I will restore the years the locust has eaten. God has done that, guys. I'm a wife and a mom, and I would have never thought that I would have this beautiful family. I'm fighting for this family through prayer. But I want you to know, whatever you've gone through, either a father that's lost a daughter or other way around, he can redeem and restore those things. And so you can find me at laurenburns.net and the Redeem Podcast, wherever you like to listen. Thank you for having me.
No problem. No problem. Thank you for being on, Lauren. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for being here with the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. So thank you guys once again for tuning in. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Also, don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else that the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, be blessed.